Story 1. I'm actually doing this very thing. I'm not religious, nor atheist, but agnostic. I've been raising my kids without religion in any primary sense. I don't praise or condemn it, as you might expect from a religious or atheist household. I simply leave it be. When my stepdaughter was younger, she would ask to pray before supper, and I allowed her the opportunity to do so. She has had questions, and I answered as best I could. At no point have I ever told either of the kids that they will or will not believe in what religion I say. I'm fully ready for when they get older, and if they choose to pursue a religion, to be supportive of their decision without judgment. I am raising my kids to understand the value of being a good person. Story 2. They already conducted a large open field experiment. Consider the Eastern European countries where religion was discouraged under communism. Religious affiliation was not forbidden, but belonging to a religious group caused problems with the authorities, especially the closer one was associated with it. As a result, many people first encountered or experienced religion as adults. It is a mixed picture because the outcome heavily depends on the country of origin. Here is research on the topic. Story 3. Most churches are a good mix of those who have always been Christians and those who converted later in life. Even those who have always been Christians have a kind of conversion story where they truly embraced their faith for themselves. Story 4. I grew up without religion and discovered it as an adult. That said, I think the likelihood depends on the specific religion. Some are harsher than others. Story 5. Very few, maybe around 10%. What percentage of people adopt a new religion as adults? What percentage join cults as adults? Adding those together should be around that level. Story 6. Not as unlikely as you think. There is some evidence that spiritual belief is an evolved survival trait. Story 7. You would be surprised by how many people look for meaning in life and how well religion caters to those needs. That being said, the mindless following of religious dogma might be lessened quite a bit. Story 8. I view religion more as a sense of community and belonging rather than actually believing the teachings literally. Love your neighbors and do not kill people. If the concept of a deity watching over and judging you is necessary for some people to have a moral compass, then so be it. Story 9. Most people are not devout in their religious beliefs. They teach children simple values like being forgiving, treating others with kindness, and self-reflecting on their own actions. The majority of people are holiday religious and do not consider religion in every decision they make. Atheists can be annoying to holiday religious people because they often had a negative experience with their initial religion or a traumatic event that caused them to stop believing in a higher power. This is why I find angry, argumentative atheists frustrating. They often try to discredit religion, usually Christianity, or mock believers by saying they believe in a bearded man in the clouds. They are some of the most unhappy people I have met. Just let people believe what they want and focus on your own life. Story 10. In general, I have noticed a big difference between atheists and religious people. Atheists bring up numbers, facts, and experiments. Religious people bring up individuals, experiences, and anecdotes. I often feel like we are talking past each other. One side has a very rational mindset, while the other argues more with emotions. The first mindset will probably not be convinced, while the second might become convinced of a religion even later in life. Story 11. I was taught religion from a young age and still did not believe it. I think some people naturally question things, while others blindly follow. It has nothing to do with age. Story 12. A certain percentage of people have fallen for cults and modern religions such as the Church of Scientology. They are a good example. Story 13. There are many people who need false hope to get through the day, so I imagine a significant number do. Story 14. Most people who grow up in church leave it in their early teenage years. We are seeing an increase in the number of people coming back. Take that how you will. Story 15. A lot. Look at how many cannot seem to see that most political ideas these days have turned into their own little religions. This was done solely by adults to cater to other adults. It's not that faith in itself is bad. It's when people start to organize it and turn it into a tool for something that things start to go wrong. No, the real issue in my opinion is that in an attempt to separate the worldly institutions from faith, Religious institutions unraveled while the non-believers started to project their need for the mystical, the greater-than-life meaning of life and moral authority onto political beliefs. Now people are religious without even noticing and rejecting the notion that they are. At least in the past, it was much clearer who or what you were dealing with, as people clearly named their biases. Now someone who believes in green energy and environmental protection could be anything between an enthusiast for improved technology and a burning authoritarian zealot thirsting for the power to dictate what others do in their everyday lives, masking their hate for humanity as love for nature. The same could be said about conservatism, social democracy, 20th century utopian fantasies, and even dating and interpersonal dynamics, which have somehow turned into a religious war zone. Story 16. Not many. The vast majority of religious people are only religious, or at least that specific religion, because they were raised in it. Story 17. Very few. I was introduced to religion at an early age, and by 9 I was already rejecting it because it did not make sense. I became an atheist for the rest of my life. I imagine if I had been introduced to it as an adult, I would have laughed and taken it as seriously as I do geomancy or astrology. Story 18. I think education is the critical differentiator. If you teach somebody religion after they have been educated, it becomes much less effective. Story 19. Only the most gullible, an invisible man in the clouds. The world's economy is based on the fact that there is one bigger idiot than the rest of us. Story 20. Well, you can try this right now. Do you believe unicorns exist? What would it take to convince you that they exist? Religion requires faith without proof, so you would need to ignore reality to believe some of these things. Are you okay with that? Story 21. Excellent question and could easily be applied to many things that are taught. Children are incredibly impressionable, for better or for worse. To answer, probably a lot less, although some people do turn to religion later in life. Story 22. It would depend on who taught you and how. People like John Lennox and C.S. Lewis, for example, may have a more convincing argument for Christianity than the more common fundamentalist type of person. This is coming from someone who really did not believe in God until adulthood, when I first heard the arguments of both men mentioned above and a few others. Story 23. A ton less, but still a surprisingly large amount. Consider the number of people who convert to radically different religions in adulthood, and I think a lot of those who identify as spiritual but not religious show that there is a personality type that wants this experience. I say this as an atheist, by the way. Story 24. Adults convert all the time. Many Christians and Muslims are converts who had never considered the religion before. This does not even include adults who embrace Wicca, voodoo, witchcraft, and other pagan practices. Story 25. In the age of social media and right-wing oligarchs owning the entire legacy media ecosystem, it is easier than ever to radicalize the less informed end of the intelligence quotient spectrum into new harmful belief systems. The United States has done an excellent job creating a cult of personality for their president, and almost all of them were already adults in 2015. Story 26. Most people think about how much unfounded belief exists because they saw it on the internet. Story 27. Religion only really works if you are indoctrinated as a child. Rational people do not hear the Bible or the Quran and suddenly start believing them. Story 28. The kinds of people who join cults in their adult life are those looking for something to give them purpose, meaning, or direction. Story 29. A lot less. If I told you the sky is a hologram every day since you were born, that is what you would believe. If I told you that now, you would think I am an idiot. Story 30. I don't think there is any genuine way to answer the question. My guess would be about 25% of the population, if we take the premise of your argument that there is no religion or religious imagery introduced before adulthood. The issue is that regardless of where you are born, you will likely be born into a society where religious belief is the norm. Everywhere you go, you are likely to see some form of religious people and ideology, which creates the idea in the brain that this is normal, this is how people are naturally. I do think the human brain naturally creates religion, but that does not mean it is true. Even most atheists follow some tradition that was initially religious because these traditions are so ingrained into society. This environment makes the question very hard to answer in real life. Studies show that when people find religion later in life, the overwhelming majority of the time the religion they find is the same one they were born into. So what is really happening? Did they go on some deep self-discovery, reading religious texts from all over the world and finally discover that the one they were raised with, that everyone around them practices, is the one true religion? Or did they just get older and their beliefs shifted more conservative, as tends to happen with age? Did they enjoy the sense of community that religion brings more than the religious beliefs themselves? We do not really know. Personally, I think if we were truly born into a world where most societies were not traditionally religious and we had modern science, most people would not accept religion as adults. I think what often happens is because we are exposed to these ideas from birth, it is very easy, and for some comforting, to find religion in things that may or may not be religious. All these little things over time strengthen the belief. Basically, we are more susceptible to seeing religious meaning in things because we have been taught to look for it, subconsciously or consciously. Story 31. A lot of people need something higher to guide them, not because they are bad if they do not have it. Story 32. Fewer people would follow the religion, but those who do would be more devoted. Many people are involved in religion for the wrong reasons, such as family expectations, rather than genuine love for God. This often leads to hypocritical behavior, with some participating mainly for social reasons. As a result, the religious population would decrease due to the absence of social obligation, but those remaining would be sincere followers genuinely resonating with the faith. The Christian community, as a whole, would authentically pursue the message of truth and love taught by Christ. Story 33. I was raised secular and non-religious and found my religion in my early 20s. I think most people have some level of spirituality even if they are not specifically religious. In many former communist countries with heavy religious oppression, many people returned to religion after the regime ended. Story 34. Instead, therefore, of putting the Bible and Testament into the hands of the children at an age when their judgments are not sufficiently matured for religious inquiries, their memories may be stored with the most useful facts from Grecian, Roman, European, and American history. Thomas Jefferson. Story 35. A very low amount. Personally, I believe that religions emerge in one of two ways, either intentionally to control or deceive people, or accidentally when individuals in ancient times began following people with schizophrenia and believing them, not realizing it was a mental illness and that these individuals were not communicating with a divine being. Story 36. A depressingly large number. History has shown that people crave the comfort and superiority of their tribes and are willing to believe almost anything to belong to them. Like the old saying goes, if God did not exist, someone would have invented it and then charged for access. Story 37. I became somewhat religious as an adult, although I was raised as an atheist and agnostic. I prefer Buddhism and non-dual Hindu teachings more than Abrahamic religions. The idea of God as a man in the sky lacks imagination, in my humble opinion. Story 38. Few, if any. Though I say that living in a world where most of Africa and Asia learned firearm technologies from missionaries, so what do I know? Story 39. Religion offers answers to many unknowns and scientific theories. Most religious people view their religion as unbiased facts from the highest power. Story 40. I was raised to think religious people are nuts, but as an adult, I explored religion and found my own path. I ignored the obviously ridiculous, seeing it as allegory or fable, and discarded ideas used for bigotry. This guides one to a more loving, peaceful, and harmonious life. There is good in religion. The ideas have just been corrupted by the faithful. Story 41. I think the most poorly educated or otherwise most desperate for human interaction or a basic standard of living would be the top adopters. We see this with cults preying on the uninformed, especially the desperate. I think moderately to highly educated people would assume the person introducing them to religion is either mentally ill or trying to recruit them into a cult. Story 42. Be grateful. Life is a miracle. Forgive people who wrong you before it harms you. Give without expecting anything in return, not even recognition. Love each other as an extension of yourself. Do not lose yourself in material things. Find something deeper to build yourself on. These are religious teachings, and as an adult, I believe them. The rest is mostly fluff. Story 43. Mankind needs religion. If it is not the divine, then it will be one of their own choosing. Just look at Reddit, staunchly atheist, but that does not stop people from being just as zealous about something else. It is hardwired into us. Story 44. The majority of proselytizing and conversions occur between adults. You cannot cure or eradicate religion just because children are not allowed to attend church. People become curious and have questions that science cannot answer, but religion offers a broader perspective. The goal is to eradicate fundamentalism, not spirituality in general. Fundamentalism is a disease of mankind, and even figures like Jesus warned strongly against being chained to traditions and customs. Story 45. I think more people would be accepting. A lot of the backlash against religion happens during that hormonal rebellious time of our lives. I doubt the traditional corrosive useless Reddit atheist is an old person. Story 46. Here is a question for you. Who do you think originated religious beliefs in the first place? It was not children. It was adults talking to other adults. Occasionally, one of those adults had real power and forced people to obey and worship one of those gods. After a while, it became unthinkable not to worship that god because when you pray or sacrifice, good things can happen if your god agrees with you, and bad things can happen if you do not. When you have someone who is very devoted to prayer, you call that person a priest, a guru, or a saint, and you exalt that person by bringing them gifts, monetary or otherwise. All of this occurs regardless of science or knowledge, because group thinking and believing falsehoods are not limited to any particular age. Not convinced enough? L. Ron Hubbard invented a religion from scratch, and now the organization probably has over $1 billion in contributions from people who want to communicate with the moon. Story 47. I would say 96%. 3% would play along, and 1% would pretend to believe and become religious leaders for the rest. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.